Go to the rest of the orders of the day. The honourable member for Prince Albert.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. And if you could please inform me in my last minute when I have 1 minute left so I can wrap up appropriately. You know what, Madam Speaker, I want to put a human face on this debate here this afternoon because there's lots of farmers in my riding across Western Canada and even some in Ontario and Quebec that are really concerned with the lack of inactivity from this government and how this government has put their livelihoods at stake and in jeopardy. Madam Speaker, the saying of this Liberal leader is out fiddling around while the canola farmers burn is very true, and that's what's happening here today. Madam Speaker, I also want to say how frustrated I am. I'm frustrated because we've tried over and over and over again to give this situation the attention it deserves, to try to create a positive situation, to get a game plan put in place, to get a positive resolution for our farmers, and nothing we've done, this Liberal government has basically blocked. Procedurally blocked. Again, even this afternoon, Madam Speaker, I don't get a full 10 minutes to talk. I don't get a chance to answer questions. I have other colleagues who want to talk on this topic here today. They won't get a chance to talk about it. And this is because the member from Winnipeg keeps blocking us over and over and over again. In fact, we've had 9 requests for an emergency debate, and he's used procedural tactics to stop that every time. In fact, Madam Speaker, when you go to the committees, when we ask for an emergency debate on this issue, in the Ag Committee, they wouldn't do it. In the Ag Committee, they won't even call their own Ag minister to talk about this issue. It's embarrassing, Madam Speaker. And then this member from Winnipeg says, we've got their backs. Hogwash. Absolute hogwash, and farmers know that. Madam Speaker, I was in Winnipeg last week. I sat down with a group of producers, and I tell you, it's really emotional. I have to say that. I'm really concerned about their mental health. I'm worried about suicides on the farm because of the implications these guys have put them under. This one farmer was telling us that he hasn't even decided what he's going to seed yet. This was last week. He was going to hit the field this Monday, and he didn't know how many acres of canola, how many acres of oats and wheat and barley he was going to seed because he didn't have a confidence in this government actually getting any resolution on the canola issue. Canola is a very expensive crop to seed. The inputs are fairly high. So for him to take that risk, he'd like to have some confidence, some knowledge that this government was taking this issue seriously and that he could see the possibility of actually having this market reopen so they actually can get a good quality price or a good price for his good quality product. What did we hear from this government last week? Nothing. What did we hear from the government 2 weeks ago? Nothing. Oh, they're going to put a working group together. What did we hear from the government from March 11th forward? The Minister of Agriculture on March 11th, when this first came out, was in Western Canada. But she didn't stop in Saskatchewan. She didn't talk to canola producers. We had to shame her into coming back. We had to inform her she didn't need a passport to come to Saskatchewan. Embarrassing, Madam Speaker. The Prime Minister last Tuesday was in Saskatoon for private meetings. I don't know who he met with, but I know the Premier said he never met with him. He never met with canola producers. You know, we got a crisis going on in the province of Saskatchewan. We had 2 things going on last Tuesday. We had a very bad grass fire, and we actually had all these canola producers trying to figure out what the path forward is before they seed. Prime Minister's in town, and he won't even talk to a farmer. He won't even talk to the Premier. Talk about who's having private meetings and for what, because we don't know. Madam Speaker, going back to the farmer that I was talking about, he told us about the economic consequences of what's happened here today. He said, you know, my 1,000 acres of canola, I've lost roughly $50 an acre right now, and he figures it's going to get worse. $50,000 out of his back pocket. And I want to make sure everybody understands, that's out of his back pocket, not CP's, not JRI's, not the shippers that ship it across the ocean, nobody else. They all get their cut. It's the farmer that's going to pay. The farmer pays. The farmer loses in that market value. And again, we get a shrug and oh, well, that's the way it is with Liberals. It's what they did to the forestry workers, and they're doing the same thing now to farmers and canola producers. Madam Speaker, I talked to another farmer, went out to his farm. He showed me the canola in his bin. He says, you know what, we had a tough harvest last year, Randy. We had a really tough harvest. Some of our canola isn't the best quality. It won't keep the way it should keep. We need to move it. And he's looking at a falling market, and he's looking at a situation where he's going to have a tough time moving that canola. But he's going to do the best he can, because that's what farmers do. They do the best they can given the situations they have. Madam Speaker, we grow the best crops in the world. There's no question about that. And the farmers will take the environment and all those conditions in stride and do what they can to make sure that they can survive. But what they don't need and they don't request, is when this government starts going around the world and shutting down markets. And that's what they've done. You know, if you look at the situation right now that's facing farmers, Durham in Italy, what's been the response from this government? Nothing. Pulses in India, what's been the response to this government? Nothing. Twitter tweet, Saudi Arabia, that is a big market for Canadian farmers. We sold a lot of barley, we sold a lot of canola into that marketplace. Because of one Twitter, they are not buying anything from Canada. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be talking to the Saudis about human rights and women's rights. We should be. But you know what? When you cut off all economic activity with Saudi Arabia, you have zero influence in that environment right now. Zero. So how do you move those yardsticks in a positive fashion? Vietnam. We have a non-tariff trade dispute with Vietnam at this point. What's this government's response? Nothing. And now we have China. You know, no wonder the Chinese looked at us and said, hey, we can put a tariff on, or we can just shut it down. Reality is, Canadians do nothing. They've got such a weak leader in the world stage, they'll do nothing. So we can do whatever we want, because what's going to be responsible from this Liberal government is nothing. The reality, Madam Speaker, as we look at this Liberal government, we look at the mistakes they're making on the international scene, you know the people that are paying for it? It's our manufacturers, it's our forestry workers, and in this situation, it's our farmers. And it's unfair to ask them to pay for Liberal mistakes, and the Liberals are making mistakes day in and day out. In fact, one farmer told me in Winnipeg, he says, do us a favor, go steal the Prime Minister's passport so he can't leave Canada, so he can't do any more damage abroad. That's what they're asking us, Madam Speaker. Reality is that they've done so much damage, there's so much work to be done, and we know this Liberal government isn't up to it, so in October we'll make sure there's a government here that'll actually be up to it and fix all that damage. Thank you, Madam Speaker.